What's going on, everybody? This is Bob's Three-Toed Warriors from Studio 1329, Word on the Streets, Season 1, Episode 13, titled, Heard It Through the Grapevines. I have Mr. Jacob Vines on the show with me today. I was going to bore you guys with a little YouTube clip in there, but I want to just drop some vocals on you there. Jacob, how you doing, sir?
I'm good, Bob. How are you?
I am good. I'm just have an unofficial sponsor here, Mr. Vanilla Crown, and we're gonna hang out and talk some football. So you can catch the podcast on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, just about everywhere else. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. It helps out more than you know. Really appreciate it. Give me some of them 5-star reviews. And if you really don't like the show, still give me some of them 5-star reviews. Jacob, tell the listeners where you can be found.
Yeah, so I can be found on Twitter. My Twitter handle is jsnake_DFF. Very active on there. If you ever have a question about a dynasty trade, you can always hit me up through DM or just at me on Twitter. I'm also at kingfantasysports.com and have a couple of articles on there, and currently working on a QB article for the Scott Fish Bowl. So, yeah.
Awesome. All right, so today we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about some Superflex startups and some ones that you've done and different strategies in them. We're going to talk about some listener questions. But before we get into that, Scott Fishbowl 10, what's up? Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
I keep looking for my
first
invite.
time
It's
in
not there.
I feel lucky. Yeah, it's my first time. I feel extremely lucky. Honestly, the scoring gives me the heebie-jeebies a little bit, but I'm just taking it day by day.
So I've had a few SFBX folk on the show. This is actually the first one I mentioned. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that scoring for those who are curious, and maybe a little bit about what Scotch Fish Bowl is.
Yeah, so Scott Fish Bowl is a tournament that was created by Scott Fish. It's a tournament that helps Fantasy Cares, which is a charity that gives money to help buy children toys and all of different things like that. If you do want to support it, I know that they have shirts on RotoWear, I believe, and stuff like that. I don't know if they're still on sale or not. But anyways, it's a fantasy charity tournament, and there's 1,200 people in it or something, which I feel extremely happy to be in it. A little bit about the scoring. It's really funky. If you look at the QB scoring, he gives some negatives and positive points for completion and incompletions. Nice. So you have to have about a 67% completion rating to stay even. And then 6 points per passing touchdown, -4 per interception. Also, sacks cost -1 points. So that's pretty crazy. Also, running is pretty similar. It's a 0.5 PPR for running backs, and then also 0.5 per first down.
Love that.
Receivers are also 0.5 per reception, and then tight ends get a tight end premium of a full point per reception and also a full point per first down.
Okay.
And it's also a super flex league on top of that, and redraft. Yeah. But I actually, after digging into the scoring, I really like it. It makes the tiers very fun.
That's very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I've heard him say on pods a year or two ago that he does the, I'm gonna call it alternative scoring. That way people can't just grab a scoring sheet and go right down ADP and stuff like that. So make you work for it.
For sure. You definitely do.
You already got to deal with luck and mishaps. Now you got to work for it. What?
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about your crazy activeness on Twitter. That's how I ran into you, dropping mini article threads. See, I put the two words together. I think that's what I did. Mini article threads talking about all kinds of different subjects. So why don't you tell us a little bit about one of your recent ones that you've enjoyed putting out there for us?
Yeah, so I actually want to talk about two because they're pretty easy.
Sure.
One that we'll actually talk about today, it's a thread about a draft breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And this is for more of win now roster construction. And so I joined a league and then just wrote a Twitter thread about it. And it was a lot of fun because it actually made me think about what I was doing. You can't just pick a guy just because. And then also I made a thread about tools that I use. So like I like to use Dynasty Trade Calculator, DLF, Twitter itself. And so putting that together was a lot of fun because I wish someone would have had that when I first joined Dynasty Twitter because it's a hard place to navigate. So that was a lot of fun to put together as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And when we are going to go deeper into those startups. So what about the other article?
I do have a recent article that was over Sony Michel. Actually, it was 2 weeks before he got foot surgery, so that one sort of sucks. And then my article before that was about Alexander Madison, and that one turned out great. That was 2 weeks before Cook holdout.
Okay.
So I've had a weird run with articles. I would read the Alexander Madison article if you're interested in him. I think he has a good case for becoming the lead back if Cook doesn't get a contract. It could like going into 2021 and maybe even 2020. So we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, I have him in one of my leagues, and I'm hoping he does because I do not have Cook. Cooks. I traded him out. I think one of the things that I find interesting about your articles is lots of people have their hot takes on Twitter. Could you imagine all over the place? There you go. Some people like to throw stuff up there, I think, just to poke people and get them fired up. But when you put out your articles, you can read the article and tell that there's a lot of thought behind it, a lot of details, statistics, things that let people know, okay, he wasn't just shooting from the hip on the article, which is really appreciated for the reader. So keep doing it.
I will. That's a big thing for me. If someone just says a blanket statement, I'm like, okay, what's the reason behind your thought? And it can't just be, I think this is how it's going to be, or it was how he looked in college 5 years ago. Like that just doesn't work for me. So I do appreciate that you enjoy it.
Yeah, no. All right, cool. Let's talk about some listener questions here. So I got two of them for us, and the winner will get an entry into the listener league, and I'll tell you how I'm defining the winner after we do the questions. So, first question comes from Brendan Borman at Brendan Borm. It cuts off there. Maybe the and is in there too. Does it make sense to nominate handcuffs early in drafts? So he's talking about auction drafts here. Does it make sense to nominate handcuffs early in auction drafts, specifically with guys who have standalone value, or should you wait until after the RB competition's gone? I'm sure it depends on if you want the player or not. But for example, Madison before Cook, that kind of thing. So see, I know he said a few more things. So he comes back after a clarification. He says, thanks. I usually nominate players I have zero interest in. Someone like Madison, whose ADP has skyrocketed, may cause someone to overspend, plus his value could plummet. It sets a market, and sometimes if people are hoarding money for a set strategy or player, you can get a bargain. So what do you think about that, sir?
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept. Like with Madison, or I'd even include Kareem Hunt into this, and that you could get people to overspend because when those first people come up, everybody wants them. I would typically go towards putting the rookies up for auction first because they are way too expensive in snake drafts and auction drafts, in my opinion, right now. And so I would focus more on the rookies early on and put Clyde Edwards-Helaire up, Jonathan Taylor up, and just see that price just get super high. And then I could see the handcuffs being a good one too. If you're like, okay, let's keep putting the handcuffs up, like Kareem Hunt, because he's now the wide receiver 3 for the Browns, according to some reports.
Or 2 if Jarvis doesn't play early.
Yeah, seriously. And so it's a good concept. I did a redraft auction draft, and I made sure to put up, it was a 1 QB league, and I put up all the quarterbacks early just to make them overspend. So I think that's a good strategy.
Okay. And what we will be winning is an entry into an auction draft, which is always fun. That's how I played my first auction. I do love it. I'm still debating if it's going to be super flex or single quarterback. I think I want to go super flex just because it's a little more challenging and the money goes a little bit differently when you're doing those bids. You don't get your quarterbacks for $1. You spend a lot more on them, so it really changes things. But we'll see. All right, so that was the question for Brendan, and the answer was, sure, why not nominate the guys that you aren't interested and make people spend their money?
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay. I don't mind that. I did an auction, and I was going first. I actually threw up Larry Fitzgerald last year. And I'm like, it was a different kind of league, but 1-year contract for $4 million is a pretty cheap quarterback contract in that type of league. And I'm like, that's as far as I was going to go, and that's what I got him for. And so that became the joke standard the rest of the oh, you spent this kind of money on him. You spent, yeah. It's kind of fun. All right. So the next question is Luck of the Polish. And that is from Mr. I think it cuts it off. ANONANOOBIS. I'm not even going to try and do that. So there you are, Luck of the Polish. So we're going to call you that. Luck of the Polish says, everyone says draft for value. Easy to conceptualize, or is it? But when the run starts, do you make selection that will accrue value and look to trade, or mostly fill in your roster like a puzzle? So fill in your roster like a puzzle to me is saying draft for need. Is that
That's
what you're
how
reading?
I understood
that?
it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, and then make a selection that has a good value and then look to trade it. I can tell you where I personally stand on that phrase alone, but I'll defer to you. You are the guest.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question for sure. In general, my philosophy is draft for value. There's not very many positions that you'll see a giant run that happens and you're like, oh no, I'm not going to make it in. The only position that I'm nervous about is quarterbacks in superflex leagues.
Sure.
And the reason is it can get pretty shallow, especially once you get into that 5th or 6th or 7th round and you have a 6 quarterback run and you go from say Matthew Stafford to like Derek Carr or something like that. And you're starting to get really nervous. And I would take the QB because your league is respecting the quarterback more than other leagues maybe.
Yeah.
But if it's like a running back or a receiver run or a tight end run or anything like that, I just stay away and take value. For example, in a recent draft that we'll talk about, I picked Michael Thomas at 1.10. And I'm not going to keep taking running backs because there's a run because the value of Michael Thomas is more than that 7th running back that I could pick.
Got it. Makes sense to me. And this, well, let me rephrase it. I would say this question changes if you're talking redraft versus dynasty. It doesn't really change. It does alter some things, but I personally try not to draft to trade. I hear it all the time, especially with Superflex and drafting extra quarterbacks just to trade them. I get it, but just get the guy you want to begin with. You know, I don't know. Why chance it if you don't have to?
It's funny you mentioned that because we are going to dig into a league where I did end up drafting 7 quarterbacks, but there was a reason behind it.
Okay, good. We'll hear it because I want to slap you.
Yeah. I won't. No, you're fine. It's like you said, it takes a ton of work to try to deal them out. So we'll dig into that later, though.
Awesome. And I know people say don't, especially in dynasty, don't draft for need. And redraft, you can totally draft for need because it's just that year. You don't want to leave the draft with no running backs. So that would be filling a roster like a puzzle if you're talking redraft there. But if you're talking dynasty, take the talent and you can figure it out later. Not that you're trying to trade the player, but let that talent grow on your team, and hopefully you have enough other supporting casts and your rosters are deep enough. That's what I'd say there. So we're going to ask this question, Mr. Jacob Vines. You are picking our league entry winner.
Oh,
which one of those? I know. Feel the pressure all of a sudden?
I do.
I know. So which one of those was the best question? Most inquisitive? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go with, I think it was Brendan's question.
Okay.
I think that's how you pronounced it, just because in auction there is that strategy that most people don't do, and that you put the player
Brendan
out
was
that you
not
don't
auction.
want.
Oh, Brendan was auction. Yeah, Brendan was auction. Yep.
Okay, cool. Making sure I'm not mistaken because sometimes my brain escapes me. But
No,
but yeah,
good.
just sort of taking that player that you don't want and put him up there for other people to take and spend more money on. So I think that's a good philosophy.
Yeah, I think he was trying to get some prep notes in there for when we go to the auction draft. I see what he was doing. I see your game, Brendan. Welcome to the Listener League, sir. Welcome to the Listener League. All right, there will be more chances to win. I think we are 5 or 6 people deep, and it's a 12-man league. 2 spots will be given out to people who give 5-star reviews. Screenshot them and send them to me at Bob's3Toad. I am not afraid of bribery. I have 3 kids. I know all about bribery. Let's go, people. Let's get it done. Give the man some 5-star reviews. Be kind. All right. So that is Listener League questions. I love to hear them. I love it when we can mix them in with our subject matter with our guests. So pretty cool there. So let's break into the 3 Superflex startup drafts you did. So I think the way you had said it to me in our chats back and forth is that you did 2 with what they call productive struggle, and the McDowell, I think, is the one I always hear
I
say
think
that.
it was.
Yeah,
Yes.
he loves that phrase, productive struggle. It's him or one of the guys on his show, and one that's a win now mode. So let's talk about the how and the why you'd want to take each approach. What does that team look like? And is that an approach you walk into a draft with, or is that an approach that a couple picks in, you determine, I see this team is going to lean one way or the other, and you make that adaptation decision either way?
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I'm going to talk about just productive struggle all the way down first. And
Absolutely.
this one, I think you can just fall into it, because I know we all talk about in dynasty drafts, snake drafts, to trade back, trade back, trade back. And so if you can get a couple of trades that you like and you just keep trading back and getting the value, then you just fall right into the productive struggle, in my opinion. So like my goal with the productive, yes.
So define productive struggle for those who haven't heard the phrase real quick.
Yes. So productive struggle is where you tend to focus more on younger players or rookie picks in the draft. So you're accruing a ton of rookie picks, and then also you're focusing more on youth. I would say typically going more towards quarterback and receiver heavy, staying away from the running back position a little bit more.
Okay.
And just in general, just building your team around the QB. QB is for Superflex, I should say. QB for Superflex, and then wide receiver.
Okay. The players that tend to last longer.
Yes.
Than the running backs. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So I will say that with doing a productive struggle, you should look for the upside of players as well. And some of those, pre-injury was Sony Michel, because I got him in the 13th round. And then also Darius Geis is a guy I like a lot in the 9th round. So they're 2 running backs that I like. I think you should look at tight ends as well. It obviously depends on tight end premium versus not tight end premium, but that's a nice position that you can have for quite a bit. And then one thing that may surprise everybody is that in the first 10 rounds of this draft that I'm about to talk about, and also my other draft, I only drafted 2 rookies. So that reason was I'm not going to reach on a rookie just for expected value. I'm just going to take value where it comes. And if that's trading back and accruing rookie picks, I'll do that all day. And I also look to get a lot of the sophomore or junior wide receivers that are lower than I expect, like, Debo.
Did you get your crystal ball at Walmart?
I don't know. It's been a weird time with this. But yeah, Debo, Debo pre-injury, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, N'Keal Harry, Mecole Hardman, and Curtis Samuel. So that's sort of like my plan around a productive struggle.
Okay. All right. So if you start trading back and the players you start picking up are these type of players you're thinking about, how do you feel when you walk away from the draft? Like, do you walk away saying, okay, ain't no way in hell I'm making it this year. I've got a chance. I'm delusional. What's usually the mojo when you leave?
Yeah, so my goal is to come out of it thinking I have no chance. The reason behind that
is goal. I love it.
With the productive struggle, I'm wanting to go for that 1.01 the next year.
Okay.
And
fair.
So I don't consider this tanking. You're trading away better players or picks for future picks. And so by doing that, you're making it where your team is not as top heavy. You're a little bit on the younger side, so probably more inconsistent. As I listed, my 2 best running backs are Sony Michel and Darius Geis. You're not going anywhere with those guys. And so by doing that, you're setting yourself up to be that first pick to then – my favorite thing to do with rookie picks is trade them away. So if I can trade them away, I'll trade them away, and I'll get that proven talent all day.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I've done it where I've had 9 out of the first 19 picks before in a draft, and last year I had 2 out of the first. I had just my standard 2 picks in the second, third round. That was it. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, back-to-back years and in very different years. So, but it was a lot of fun one year, and I sat in the pool and drafted with the beer in one hand and my phone in the other
There you go.
this year. So.
One piece of advice that I would say is like if you had the 1.01, the startup pick, and you startup draft, you can't trade it away. I'd recommend going Patrick Mahomes over CMC or Saquon just because he's one of the safer players in Superflex, and he's arguably the 1.01 anyway. So why not take him?
Sure, quarterbacks tend to last a lot longer. So you wouldn't take Lamar Jackson there?
I'm just skeptical on how well he's going to do by keeping up his efficiency. So I think Patrick Mahomes has shown it over 2 years. I know if you look at the total points, it's not as great, but if you start looking at points per game, he was still, I think, QB7, I think, on the year, which that's still a good year. And I just think Lamar's going to take a step back this next year. So I would like Mahomes over him.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Mahomes had the injury. Lamar was out of this world great. And you always say they're going to come back down to earth. And maybe they don't for a year or two, but they do eventually, usually. And you could see that possibly happening with the smaller running quarterback easier. But TBD, right? I would go Mahomes too, not to question that. Even though I got Broncos all behind me, I would still go Mahomes there. So I gotcha. So what else in a productive struggle?
I could talk about my actual starting roster for this league.
Yeah, let's hear that one.
So my this is actually the Dynasty HQ3 Listener League.
Okay.
Some of y'all listeners may know them. They're a Dynasty podcast. And so my quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes and Sam Darnold. Okay. And then my 2 lovely running backs of Darius Geis and Sony Michel.
Okay. Start 1 or start 2?
This one is start 2.
Okay.
I also have Tony.
You have more running backs.
I have Tony Pollard. I have Giovanni
Okay.
Bernard. I have some other ones. It's just those are my main 2.
Okay.
And then for my wide receivers, Marquise Brown, Mecole Hardman, N'Keal Harry, Deontay Johnson, Christian Kirk, and Debo would be like my starters. And then at tight end, Evan Ingram or Hunter Henry. Okay. And you may be listening to this thinking that is the worst roster I think I've ever heard for a 12-team Superflex Dynasty League. But I also want to remind people that I traded back. And so I have 5 2021 first-round picks, 3 2021 second-round picks, and 4 2021 third-round picks.
Okay. So you loaded up to trade for proven talent next year or discounted talent as well next year to keep growing your team.
That's the plan. I really
like
the
Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, let's go with that. No.
Who's building a good team? Like their defense is starting to look better, their offense is starting to look better. It's it took some tough decades, tough couple years, but
yes,
yeah, okay, I like it. Mecole Hardman there, I could definitely see him doing really well or not well this year with Sammy or not Sammy. We don't know what we're dealing with there. You have an opinion on that one?
I lean towards Mecole Hardman not having a good year this year, but next year it's definitely looking brighter. And I think he has probably the most potential upside out of any of the receivers, just from the fact, like, we don't like what happens if Tyreek Hill has an off the field issue or doesn't sign back with the team. And I know it's who would ever do that, but
right.
I wouldn't factor that into my like total value of him, but it's definitely like, if you have him on your team, you can look at it and be like, nice. Okay. I'm happy with that.
Okay. And then similar but different type question for Deontay Johnson. That is a very confusing wide receiver core, very confusing quarterback situation, very possibly confusing running back situation. It's just an interestingly weird team this year, I think. Pittsburgh.
I think that Juju's for sure the wide receiver 1 on that team, and I haven't seen Deontay Johnson's value increase in startups that much, but definitely in some trades I've seen, it's been wild. Like, I think I saw Deontay Johnson in a 2021 second for Keenan Allen, so I would definitely take Keenan Allen in a trade like that. But I'm not on his hype train, but I'll get him in. I think it was the 9th round in this draft is when I got him, or maybe the late 8th. So I'll
So
take him around there.
what about the people who say that but Ben liked Washington better, not Deontay? What about those people? What do you say to those people?
I just think the best player is going to rise to the top, and Deontay Johnson played better than James Washington last year. Some people will argue, and if you look at the stats, Deontay Johnson played better than Juju on a points per game basis, but I just I just don't see it being to where Deontay Johnson takes the number one role unless Juju is not signed back in 2021,
Which is
and then
possible.
it is possible, and then they also decide not to bring in a wide receiver one talent.
Sure. Okay. I just thought of throwing some bonus questions there at you.
Yeah.
Since you're part of your team, I figured you thought about your team a little and want those at you. So let's talk about your win now strategy, which is a completely different world from what you did.
Yeah. So
probably the guys you traded with.
Yeah. The win now strategy. Typically, what I'm going to focus on is QBs and running backs early in superflex leagues and waiting on wide receivers. Mm-hmm. And the reason that is that usually the value for those upper tier running backs is going to be higher than, say, the upper tier wide receivers. But as everything's been this whole time, I did the complete opposite in this draft, and that was just based off of when the value fell to me. And so, as I talked about earlier, Michael Thomas went at 110 to me. And then I really liked Devontae Adams at 203.
Oh,
and
wow.
Those were the first two wide receivers off the board, and I was ecstatic when I saw it. Mm-hmm. And then I also recommend not going into a draft with a strict plan and being able to adjust with that, which I think Michael Thomas at 1.10 is a pretty easy adjustment. You're like, oh, best player, I'll take it. And also with my strategy, it was a third round reversal, which helped me with getting Josh Jacobs at 3.02. And just to talk about third round reversals, it's where the 112, the last pick, gets the first pick in the second round and the first pick in the third round. And the reason behind that is it evens out the playing field, because the person who has the first overall pick, it's such a large value jump from those other
higher
players.
Tier player.
Yes, and if anybody's interested in that, I do have a couple of threads that I've talked about it, and you can also DM me about it. But anyways, I ended up with getting at running back Josh Jacobs, Le'Veon Bell, Leonard Fournette, David Montgomery, and Todd Gurley.
Oh, nice.
That's so I have, you could look at it and be like, oh, that's a high-risk squad, but I'll definitely take that for 2020. And also another funny thing is I waited on quarterback, and I ended up getting Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr.
Okay.
And one thing I didn't mention about this league is it's loosely based off of Scott Fishbowl scoring, in that it's, I believe, negative 0.5 for incompletion and positive 0.3 for completion. So not quite as big of a jump, but Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr get a bump in that scoring. And it's also -1 per sack. So I really like the quarterbacks there as well. And I went a little bit more with the age. I really like Jamison Crowder and T.Y. Hilton as well. And I just went more win now and got a couple of younger guys like A.J. Dillon later on.
Okay. So here's a question for you. So when you go dynasty win now, do you sometimes feel like you're drafting more of a redraft team? In the early parts anyway. No?
Sort of. It's just because you still have to follow – I still follow ADP for at least the first 10 rounds usually.
Yeah.
And so in this draft, it just seemed like the value just keep falling to me, because I had it to where Leonard Fournette fell to – I believe it was the 4.10, which I thought was excellent value. And I think
that way ahead of that in redraft.
Yeah. And so you can play the game with getting some players a little bit cheaper in doing the dynasty and getting the older guys cheaper. Yeah. But I will say, taking Todd Gurley at the end of the 6th and David Montgomery the first of the 7th, that could be seen as risky. But as you said, I'm win now, so I am fine doing it as a more redrafty decision.
Yeah, the team felt more redrafty is, I guess, maybe what I'm trying to say. But yeah, you picked up so much value because people do value the youth, or sometimes even overvalue the youth. And then you're like, I'll take the trophy, and I'll take the stack of cash, and then I'll figure it out next year.
Yeah, that's my plan, and I still have my 2021 first and 2021 second, so I didn't move any rookie picks for this team, which I'm I'm glad with, because I can still get that young talent to come in and help me out.
Okay. All right. I like it.
Or trade it away for proven talent.
So you've not mentioned that once. You've mentioned it twice, or maybe 3 times. So I feel like there's a little heartstring there you have for that statement. So let's go ahead and hit it.
Yeah. So I think that we all have to remember that rookies in general do bust. And let me find a Twitter thread I have. There we go. So in general, if we look at rookie hit rates, rookies only hit 45% of the time if they're a first round pick. And by hit, that means they have one, if they're a quarterback, top 12 season for one QB. If they're a running back, top 24 season. If they're a wide receiver, a top 30 season. Okay. And then tight end, I believe, is top 12. So in first round rookie hit rates, it's only 45%. Second round rookie hit rates drops to 30%. And then third round or later drops to 9.3%. And that's just hitting on one season.
Thank you. That's what I was about to ask.
Yes.
So hitting on one season is not what you're looking for in Dynasty, right?
I would say you want to look for 2+, and if we do look at 2+, the first round rookie hit rates drops to 31%. So it's not a huge drop off, and then second round's 18%, and third or later's 4%. I do think that just with rookies in general, you have to temper expectations, and if you pick them early and often, you're gonna be a little bit on the more risky side, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. I like it. I'm only in 2 dynasties currently, and I don't want to be in more right now. Stay strong. Quit asking me, people. But I've seen different, like I have a couple co-league owners, league owners, and every year, if they walk in with one rookie pick, they feel like they've accomplished their life. Like, I want one so I can still attend and be there, not just sit there and watch you guys and drink beer. I think one guy actually came with no picks and still and traded in to get one just to be part of the action. But yeah, and then I've seen people who, like me, that one year where I had 9, or we had 2 people who had a good chunk of the league. They were selling stuff. I got Gurley for a late second. I got, they were just they're in the market to sell, and I'm not going to tell you no.
Yeah.
So I've seen both sides of the coin and both mentalities. So it's interesting. But not having some understanding of your player is a nice advantage. I've seen this guy perform year 1, year 2, year 3. So yeah. Especially with quarterbacks, wide receivers, probably tight ends. With running backs, man, you can be Gurley one year and you can be watching the next year. But J.J. one year and J.J. next year, 2 different guys.
Yeah.
So
running back's tough.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%. All right. On productive versus win now. Anything else you'd want to add to that? Any other approaches, thoughts, tactics, nuggets of gold?
I would say realize with the productive struggle, it's called a productive struggle for a reason. It's going to be painful. It may take a year or 2, and just be patient with it. Don't feel like you have to rush into it. If you can't get good deals for your rookie picks, then just pick the player. Like, don't feel like you're rushed to make your team competitive. And with the win now, I think it's looking at your team after that first year and deciding if you need to go into a rebuild or not. And with the team I mentioned, I don't expect it to need to go into a rebuild that soon. But if it does, then you have to just look at it and think objectively and, okay, it's time. And you blow it up a little bit, and then you come back 2022.
Yeah. Yep. One of the guys in our league did that. He saw a couple teams really take off. He won 2 years in a row and not so much this year. And he said, all right, I'm just going to – this is one of the guys who doesn't like to come in with picks. And here's Lamar, give me 3 first. Here's this guy, let's do this. And he just made some moves and had some fun. And, yeah, I got it. All right. Let's switch over, maybe. I don't know. Let's switch over to Dynasty ADP buys and sells. What do you mean by that, and who do you have?
Yeah, so for me, ADP buys and sells are players that I think the market or the ADP is too high or low on.
Sure.
So that's just sort of my easy way to talk about it. And you could talk about ADP in startup drafts. And then if you want to get a little bit more technical, you could also use like a trade finder that DLF has or Dynasty Trade Calculator has to get a little bit more in-depth information related to like long-standing dynasty leagues. But an example of a dynasty sell for me is Kyler Murray. And if you're listening to this and you've seen my Twitter nonsense over Kyler Murray versus Dak Prescott, you definitely know my views. Kyler Murray's currently being selected between 1.06 and 1.10 in a Superflex startups, which is, in my opinion, pretty close to his ceiling. And it's only after he produced as the quarterback 8 for 1 year. And his ceiling is maybe jumping Lamar Jackson and moving up 4 to 5 spots, or he could have a fall from grace like Baker and have a massive value decrease. So just in my opinion, he's not worth it at his ADP for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's a Baker after the Goff hype. Just
Yeah,
rotate that quarterback.
Yeah, I need to dig in more into like the sophomore slump to actually get some hard value on that. But even if we talk about Dak Prescott, his rookie year he was QB6 and his next year he was QB10. So I've at least seen it a couple of times, but I'm not sure if it's actually like a long-standing thing.
Okay. So what are a couple more people that you say are just too high? You should sell them, and maybe a couple that are too low.
Yeah.
In
So
Dynasty.
This is something we've talked about a lot already, and it's the rookies in general or ADP sells. Okay. Just to give a little bit of stats on that, I saw a thread from DF Bean Counter on Twitter, and he said that rookies are being selected at an all-time high this year. And in 2020, this year, the average ADP for the top 12 rookies is 38.6. And so that's like the beginning of the fourth round in a 12-team league. While if we look from 2014 to 2019, the average ADP was 58.3, which is closer to the beginning of the sixth. And so this just shows me that we're overhyping the rookies and just really selecting them at their ceiling. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the middle of the second is also right at his ceiling, in my opinion. Like he may get up into that late first, but that's like 5 spots versus say getting Darius Geisen in the 9th, who you could maybe see jump more if he can stay healthy, which that's a huge if, but I am praying.
Sure. So since we are on the rookies and you did mention CEH, how are you ranking the 3, 4 big ones? You got a preference there? I'm sure you probably debated this once or twice, right?
I actually stay away from the rookie debates just because I haven't done deep dives like other people have into their college profile. But
that's okay.
I definitely like Jonathan Taylor over Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Okay.
So I would say it's like Jonathan Taylor 1, Clyde Edwards-Helaire 2, Dobbins 3, and then Swift 4. That'd be my order.
All right. Sounds pretty typical for what the people are feeling. The two switch up in the front, but yeah, back and forth, depending on which mode you are. If you're believing one way or the other. So yeah. All right. Very cool. What about some people you should be buying because they're on the low?
Yeah, so my buy is Mike Williams. He's currently being drafted at the wide receiver 47 according to DLF ADP, which is the overall of 123, which is round 10, the beginning of round 10. And if we look back at Williams' 2 seasons, he was wide receiver 32 in 2018 and wide receiver 40 in 2019 in PPR leagues. And obviously in half PPR leagues, he was more valuable because of those touchdowns in 2018. Sure. He's also a candidate for positive touchdown regression going into 2020. If we look back to 2019, he didn't score a touchdown until I believe it was week 14 and only had 3 touchdowns that whole year or 4. And his touchdown rate back in 2018 was 10% of his targets were touchdowns, while in 2019 it was only 2.2%.
Oh, wow. So
I expect it to go somewhere in the middle of that 5 to 6%-ish range. And then I also think with Herbert at the helm or Tyrod Taylor for maybe the first 8 weeks or so, whatever that works out, I don't see that affecting his value. And if anything, the deep ball of Herbert's going to help him. And he'll also be on the field until 2021 because they picked up his option.
Okay. That's kind of the direction I was ahead with the quarterback question because that's usually everybody's next question for him and Keenan Allen and the tight end and the running back scenario because you got one guy who has one style and then you bring in the next guy or / guys. So Awesome. Very good question. Anybody else you want to add to that, to the Dynasty ADP buy sells thoughts? Or
I would just say one more buy just related to ADP, and maybe this is just because I like Payne or something, but Darius, guys, I know I mentioned him once before.
yeah,
And
you must like Payne. You don't like your knees. You don't like.
I don't. It's just, for me, a running back that can end up being at RB18, I think is a conservative mark for him if he's healthy for all 16 or maybe even 12 games. And he's currently drafted in the 9th or 10th round in my startups, which is probably RB30. I didn't actually count it, but I just think that that's a bargain for his potential upside.
Yeah, he is definitely another guy in a very interesting scenario. They drafted him. He gets hurt. They draft Love. He gets hurt. They get AP just hanging around like, y'all still writing me checks? Because I'm here. They grab another guy this year. It's like they have so much in the run. And that's not even all of them, but they have so much in the running back. And it's like, okay, who's going to be healthy? Who's actually going to play? Will it be a huge committee, or will they commit to somebody, and will their offense produce enough to actually make them even valuable other than just running between the 20s? So that should be interesting too, really. But if they do hit, that's a very nice deal.
All my dynasty leagues will be rejoicing because I have him in like 80% of my leagues. So
yeah. Would you consider David Montgomery a buy or a sell? Right now, I feel like he's had a lot of the buy feel, and then he's starting to get hyped quite a bit recently, I feel.
I've been helping that hype train a little bit.
It might have been you. I don't know. You're taking so much. You're like, you got a filter? Okay. All right.
To me, he's a buy just based off of, like, in this most recent draft I did, I got him at the beginning of the 7th, which for a running back that he finished at RB24 last year in PPR leagues, I think that with his volume, if he can just become a little bit more efficient, if you're drafting him in that range, which most in redraft and dynasty, that's where you're drafting him, you're drafting him at his floor while he can get into his ceiling of, I would say, a middle tier RB2, maybe RB18, RB17, somewhere around there. And you may say that's not that big of a jump. It's only like 6-7 spots, but he's going to be consistent. He was, I believe, 7th in carries in 2019. And I just think we get too down in the dumps with running backs that don't, quote, produce, even though he had a top 24 season.
Every running back has to be a top 5 running back. Don't you know that?
That is something I've been battling with, is every single thing I write is such and such offense is going to get better, or such and such running back's going to be better, or wide receiver. And it's funny that we look at it and it's like, if we say 40 people can be a top 24 wide receiver, that's not possible.
Right.
And it's been tough for me to wrap my head around that, because there's someone like Jamison Crowder that I'm like, oh, he's great. He'll be a top 24 receiver. But if you look at it, it's just one of those things that, is he going to get jumped out? Is he going to be there? Like, it's something I've been wrapping my brain around recently.
Yeah. And realistically, if everybody gets better, and they can, nobody gets better. If everyone gets a raise, we're still on the same playing field. Everything just gets more expensive. We all earn more points, but I'm playing against a guy who got more points, so it's all the same. So, yeah.
I feel like that needs to be on a T-shirt or something. That's very good.
Yeah, I do what I can. All right, so let's talk about my Ask All preseason question. You have your Fantasy Pros ADP up?
Yep.
Awesome. All right, so who is one quarterback, one running back, one wide receiver that you can possibly see finishing in the top 5 of the season, but you're able to draft 13th or later at their position, not the 13th round, but their position. And we're really talking redraft here, not dynasty, just to be clear. So we'll start with the what I always feel is the easiest one, and that's the quarterbacks, because I feel like so many people have that opportunity to squeak in there and maybe steal that that 5th spot. Who do you got?
Yeah, I got a pretty boring guy. It's Matthew Stafford. He's currently at QB 13, so I'm cheating. He's right at your threshold.
Hey,
but if we look –
speed limit, you made it.
Hey, right? If we look back at 2019, he was on a QB 4 points per game range, and I think he's just a good value, and his weapons honestly increase with the addition of Swift, and I expect him, if he can stay healthy, to have a good year.
I completely buy that. I am a fan of the Stafford. Stay healthy, man. Throw that ball to Galladay, and let's make some stuff happen. Yeah, Stafford is getting a lot of love. I got a feeling that by the time it's all said and done in your redrafts, he probably won't still be sitting around 13. But above him is Brady. There's a lot of hype there. Wentz, I could see him going in front of Wentz possibly. Breeze, Rodgers, Ryan, Allen, Watson, Murray. So I can maybe see him slipping into the 12th spot, but who knows? So, all right. And you said we are going full PPR, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let me flip over because I'm on standard right now. Not that I wanted to be a standard, just default to do it. So that's another joke for a different time. But all right. So let's talk about who you would go with here as your 13th or later guy, running back that you could see finishing 5th or better.
Yeah, so this one is somebody that it just purely depends on his health, and it's James Conner. I think that, and I don't know if someone said him before, but I just think if James Conner can stay healthy for all 16 games, the Steelers they always like to use that bell cow running back. They like to give him the ball often, and I could see them also wanting to use Conner to take the work off from Big Ben and just keep pounding the ball. And I just think he has potential if he can stay healthy. And I mean, we'll see. He hasn't shown it the last couple of years, but
yeah.
We'll see.
So two parts here. One, as soon as you said health, who did I think of? Gurley.
You thinking Derek? Oh yeah, Gurley. Yeah.
I was thinking of Gurley being 16th instead of Connor down at 22nd, because I think in him in Atlanta, he has a huge opportunity to be great as long as he the knees hold up, and that offense can just be, to me, very, very effective. The way it sits versus a lot of the question marks it sits around Pittsburgh. But what I was going to say here is, if you look at running backs, you talked about not drafting the running backs high in your productive struggle. And then I think this is why I said the thing about going more redrafty with your team, is that point you made about Connor, who's sitting at the 22nd running back, illustrates the fall from grace that your dynasty running backs get. Because he was he first round last year in redraft? I feel like he was top, or was that 2 years ago?
No, I think that was last year.
Yeah,
he was in the first or second round.
Yeah, he was up there for sure. Now that's probably pushed in the 4th, 5th round. Although this year would probably be interesting on a lot of running backs going off the board quick. But that drop is just amazing.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's a good example of, like, you have a couple of injuries and he drops. I think Darius Geis is another example if you look back to whenever he came in the league. It's
an amazingly talented player Geis is, and people just forget about it because of the injuries.
I think another example is Todd Gurley, who you just mentioned, who was literally the first pick overall, and now he's going in the 3rd, 4th round. And I do agree with you that I think he has a lot of potential on the Atlanta offense. And one thing, if you look back a little bit, is in 2019, he only had 30 receptions, which was 20 less than his 2018. And the Falcons constantly throw to their running back and give them 50 receptions or so. So I think that's good for him.
Yeah, it's a good skill set that he does not lack at all. He has plenty of pass catching chops, I think some people would say. All right, cool. So those are some quick steals. I don't really cover the tight end because any tight end that catches one more ball could be tight end 5, one more touchdown, I should say. And I'm never going to cover kickers in DST unless you make me or pay me a lot of money. I'll do what you say then, maybe.
Thank you for not including kickers.
Yeah, no. There will be no kickers or DST in those who are in the auction league because that is just wrong. All right. So we're going to wrap up the show here. Make sure you guys subscribe on our next show. It's going to be pretty cool. We're doing something different. I'm going to have another Jacob.
Okay.
But not you, Jacob. I'm going to have Jacob, and I'm going to have to ask him how he says his name. I think he says his name Dunn, not Dune, kind of like it looks. I think he says Dunn, even though it's Dunne. He is a beat reporter from my Denver Broncos. I'll have him on the show. We're not going to talk just Broncos, people, so don't worry about it. But we are going to see a little bit of, the day in the life of what a beat reporter does, because we always hear that phrase. Oh, the beat reporter says this. The beat reporter say that. Well, who the hell's a beat reporter? We're going to find out. I've listened to a couple of his podcasts, and they're very interesting. Him and his co-host go pretty deep into teams, really, just breaking down teams is the episodes I listened to, and it was really insightful, I guess is what I want to say. So it's going to be a good show. Don't miss it. Sign up now. Subscribe now. 5-star review now. Jacob, remind the listeners where they can find you, sir.
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at jsnake_DFF or on kingfantasysports.com.
Nice.
Thanks, Bob. This was a lot of fun, and I was able to talk about my rookie hate in Dynasty Leagues, and that's always a fun thing.
All right. Well, before I let you go and before I give the final shout out, and people don't you hang up, Jay Snake, were you a Jake the Snake Roberts fan growing up, or were one of your buddies a Jake the Snake, or
yes,
are you a Jake Plummer fan?
No. I actually never watched WWE growing up, and this story came from a coworker that I literally met him twice, and he was like, "Oh, Jake the Snake, what's up?" And I was just like, "What are you talking about? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about at all." And so then I know, right? And then the funny thing is, it was later that year. It was 2018. I made a trade with a coworker in fantasy football of all things, and I traded away Nick Chubb and AJ Green for Zeke. And that was around the time Nick Chubb started to blow up and AJ Green was looking good. And then the next week, AJ Green got hurt. And so then Jake the Snake just became my name for like that whole rest of the season.
Okay, so you did steal something.
I did steal something. And so I just ran with it on Twitter, and I've liked the name so far.
Don't worry. My name is very similar. One of those kind of stories. That's awesome. All right. So I can be found at Bob's 3-Toed on Twitter, on YouTube at Bob's 3-Toed Warriors. Listen to new shows that drop on Monday and Thursday mornings on YouTube and everywhere podcasts can be found. That's it for the show. This has been Bob's 3-Toed Warriors with Jacob Vines, reminding you that soon enough you'll be able to hit the waiver wire, set your lineups, dominate your opponents. Let's win some damn championships together, people. I'll see you.